Stand by alert. Death Star approaching. Estimated time to fire range.
Feeling about this.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 272 of the Skyhoppers podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ben, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, Cole.
Hello. There.
The second, what'd you say? The Ben Kenobi podcast?
Yeah.
This is the second one of those this week. We're recording a day late, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to miss the Wednesday record, but they can do it without me. Both Evan and Dakota were like, lol, we can't do either day, Wednesday or Thursday. So Cole and I ended up here on a random, rare Thursday night record, which is all well and good because I didn't actually have time to watch the Kenobi finale yesterday, but I did today, and I hurt. I'm in pain. I feel strangely uplifted, but also a fair amount of pain. And actually I have a fair number of thoughts, as you might guess. I don't know if there's anything we particularly need to talk about too much. I am not on social media anymore, at least for the time being. I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it and say I'm never going back, because, you know, who knows? It's a terrible thing. But I'm not up to date with anything that's going on, so maybe you know something I don't, but I can't think of anything.
I'm flipping through my normal sources just to see if there's any like big news stuff that we haven't talked about. I don't think there really is.
Okay, while you do that though, while you double check, I will say I was on the EU subreddit today, which is always the beginning of a good story. They don't like Kenobi very well over there. But that's not why I'm here. One thing that kind of surprised me was I was flipping through it, and I could be totally wrong. This could just be hubris, whatever, I don't know. One thing that I have very slowly, kind of very mildly taken on as one of my own personal projects on Wikipedia as an editor, as a verified editor, is finding Star Wars Insider articles that don't have spreads, and I've told you this, or don't have images, but have a magazine, like a full 2-page spread. And what I want to do is I want to go and I want to get those spreads, combine them in Photoshop, make them look as good as possible, and then add that image to the page, to the article. Someone posted, you might have seen this, somebody posted the spread for Mara Jade Flesh and Blood to the Expanded Universe subreddit. I saw that, and my first thought was, I made that image. I did that. I did that, and I posted it on Wikipedia. But I was like, maybe not, because the weird thing is, it is a different, it's a different size. So it might not have been me, and I don't want to presume that I'm the only person that could have done this. But I will say, when I search Mara Jade Flesh and Blood, Star Wars Insider, or just Mara Jade Flesh and Blood, the only image that comes up with that, the only image of the spread that comes up is on starwars.fandom.com. So this is not important. Nobody gives a flying bantha poodoo about this, but I did think it was fun that maybe somebody posted something that I did from the Star Wars on the Star Wars wiki to the Expanded Universe subreddit. Thank you for your pity golf clap. There's, like I said, there's not a ton, not a lot to it, but could be fun. Big if true, as they say.
Big if true. Indeed.
Did you find any news while I was filling for time?
Not really. I mean, I think there's been a couple of like small comics announcements. Like I think there's a Ronin comic coming out soon.
Yeah. We did miss last week, so there's a couple things from last week.
Yeah, and we mentioned in After Hours the next Legends Essential Collection got officially revealed. Coming out in November, buddy. The Back to War, Revan, and Deceived got cover art for all of them, which had been leaked like a week ago, but now it's officially confirmed. So,
I was gonna say it's funny that it's like they officially confirmed this, but there still is another set that is leaked that is not confirmed.
No, I think this is everything that we know now.
Okay, are we all caught up now?
The titles for these had leaked a long time ago, and then like an Amazon listing got posted last week early, and then yesterday or the day before, Star Wars the Del Rey at Twitter finally posted them officially. So it's like, we go through stages of this every time, I feel like.
And it's hard because it's like the internet is such a wonderful thing. The reason we're doing this right now is because of the internet, but also it has ruined every surprise ever for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, the leaks about the Kenobi show were almost like dead on, honestly.
Really?
Yeah. Like I'll talk about that some more later on if you want me to.
Okay.
I think it is interesting. Sure. And I was following all of them. I was following all of them, so I kind of had a beat for beat for the whole show, honestly. But
kind of makes me wonder. Well, I mean, real quick, if we can take a quick aside there without going too much into it, because we haven't actually talked about it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, for something like that, when you see an episode of something and you're like, yeah, like you were with Kenobi, we're like, yeah, that was fun, but it wasn't my favorite thing that I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that there are leaks and knowing where the show, especially seeing something that confirms a lot of what you think you already like, that stuff you've read. It's like,
look, the first episode more or less lines up with everything we saw, right. So likely it's all going to play out this way.
Sure. Does that affect your enjoyment at all, knowing that it's like, okay, this didn't work for me right now, but if it goes this way, this could be cool? Or do you just really just take it in as it's coming?
I really do take it in as it happens, because I think the biggest one for me was whenever The Last Jedi was coming out. Like, it didn't really have any big leaks like The Force Awakens or The Rise of Skywalker, like had their full plot leaks way in advance. But after the premiere of Last Jedi and the reviews were able to come out, leaks started happening, and I did read like plot synopses of it basically before the movie dropped. And some of the stuff in it was like, I don't know about this. And then seeing it on screen, like especially like Luke's death, the way the guy wrote out what happened sounded really lame.
See, that's the problem too. Yeah, you're at the mercy of whoever's writing the thing.
The editorialization of the person writing it, like, gave their own impression of it, and they didn't like it, and so they wrote it in a way that sounded dumb. Then I watched the movie like that was the most great thing I've ever seen. So I really do I look at it. To me, it's just like information, and I try to take it in as like neutrally as possible. And seeing it actually executed is so different.
Well, and that is I envy you, because again, as like and maybe this is not exactly the same thing, but I told you in After Hours, which, if you're curious, listeners, After Hours this week, basically just the second episode of the podcast, because it was Cole and me, as it usually is. We usually just talk about Star Wars and the Nintendo 64 a lot in this case, but really primarily Star Wars. So if you're thinking about patreon.com/Skyhoppers podcast.
Yeah, and the first hour of Pro Skywalkers this week was basically us talking about Kenobi. So
it's just funny. I don't know. I talk all the time about how the different pairings of co-hosts have their own dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that Cole and I will always just default to talking about Star Wars, even if we're technically like After Hours has no rules, but technically
we try to keep the Star Wars talks the main show.
We do. But anyway, I mentioned to you that I started reading Legacy of the Force, and without spoiling too much about that, I will say certain character fates are known to me, and that colors everything that I'm reading. Whereas like you might very well get it, especially if you're expecting this character coming out of some of the previous stuff, you could have a totally different read.
Mm.
And like think that, oh, maybe this is going in a direction that I like, and it's probably not. Just FYI, it's probably not if you're anything like me. But yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that, and just like how a because to me, it's always a disappointment when I know something ahead of time. It rarely, if ever, ruins anything, but it is always a disappointment.
And
And
it's funny though, because like the stuff I don't care about as much, I don't get spoilers for. Like I went into the new Top Gun movie, and I didn't know anything about it really, and I had a great time with it. But I knew nothing about it. Anything could have happened in that movie. I didn't know any spoilers about it at all beyond it being a Top Gun sequel.
But do you keep up with leaks on like Star Trek?
I don't see very many of those. I don't know if there's a good like forum where that happens. Like if there was, I probably would, but I'm just not aware of it.
Star Trek fans are generally healthier than Star Wars fans and spend
Maybe.
more time outside, away from the internet.
But like I do follow like the Marvel Studios subreddit, leak subreddit too.
Yeah.
So I follow all that as well. So there's no surprises for me on that front really either.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm playing armchair psychologist for you right now, it's like, to me, it's like the things you care more about, you just inherently are curious about and want to know more about. Whereas like Top Gun, it's like, I mean, forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but it's like, can't imagine you're going to base your life around Top Gun now. It's just like,
Probably
oh, that's
not.
sure, it's a fun movie, whatever.
I think there is like a new bar for a potential like Rogue Squadron movie, is like how to do fighter pilot stuff really really well. It's like, there's your new that's your new bar to clear because it's really good.
Speaking of Rogue Squadron movie, there were a couple lingering shots on a couple of characters in the finale of Kenobi.
Yeah, let's say Corran, we'll just call him Corran instead of Corran Horn for now.
Yeah.
Has now had like more appearances than like Cad Bane in live action television, which is kind of wild.
Oh, and they're just being so coy about
episodes.
it. They're just being so coy about it. It's like, we know who it is. We know. Just tell us.
It's funny. I have even like a further thought on that I noticed this time whenever I was rewatching
Please,
it.
by all means.
That Kumail Nanjiani's character Haja, he's like the fake Jedi, but as far as that kid's concerned, he's a real Jedi. He doesn't know any different, right? And he's wearing a green robe.
Damn it, Cole. Damn
it.
You're so right. You're very right. I will say, again, we talked about this. Kind of related. I love Haja. I do, especially this week. Especially in the finale, I thought he was very good.
Plenty of business opportunities here.
He was really good, but
never change.
So I guess we don't have too much news to cover. I was a little concerned with the Ronin news because sometimes I just sometimes I speak before I think and I say things, and I was just like, in Discord I was like, I really wish they didn't think Ronin was the only Vision sort that was worth revisiting.
Yeah, I agree.
And then Luke was thankfully like, it says it's the beginning of a series. Like, its odds are good that they expand on a lot of the others. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. I just might have stuck my foot in my mouth a little bit. But that'll be, I mean, we've talked about Visions as a kind of a spin-off before, as like an Elseworlds what if kind of timeline. What do you think if they just keep expanding, if they keep doing what they're doing? They don't give us, obviously we're getting more Visions content shows, like shorts in the future, but it's like, do you think it'll kind of end up being like that, whereas like the shorts are what drives everything and it never goes beyond the shorts and stuff derived from that? Obviously that's entirely speculation, but I want to get your thoughts on it one way or the other.
That's a good question. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it like that. It very well could be that that's just the way it drives. It's like, they put out a set of shorts and then see how people respond to it and then make new content accordingly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still really hoping that maybe one of the anime projects that they've teased might be happening is that Ninth Jedi series that we might end up getting. And, if that's the way that happens, is that still going to be Visions? Or is that going to be its own thing? Like, I don't know. It's hard to say because we've really only got stuff for Ronin at this point.
And that gets so complicated where it's just like, okay, if the Ninth Jedi is not if it is Visions, then it's like, okay, whatever. It's what if. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
What if it's not Visions?
Is
If it
that
just
now
becomes
not
its
part
own
of the
thing.
timeline?
Is it part exactly? Because it's the vibe I always got was far future.
Yeah, that's the
Does that
vibe
make
I got
sense?
too. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And obviously I'm not gonna, I know some people would take issue with the Jedi Order going away again, but it's just like, I saw a post today that reminded me, it's like the Jedi Order was purged like 12 times in Legends. Let's get over it. Like, there's always someone rising that wants to kill all the Jedi. I think we do well to just get over that.
It's just the cycle
It's
of
gonna
power
happen.
in the galaxy.
It is. It is.
Evil rises, good overcomes it, and vice versa. Any power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I feel like anytime the good guys take over, eventually they're going to get complacent and fall.
Yep. It happens so many times, but both in real life and in Star Wars. But anyway, I digress. That could be cool. I'm super behind on comics. Like, I have not read a Star Wars. I'll probably go pick mine up tomorrow. I haven't read a Star Wars comic in quite a bit, but comics are one of those things that I really just kind of like go super hard on for 2 weeks at a time and just chew through my backlog. But just the way that it's I've talked about this before, that kind of serialized bite-sized storytelling just is not my favorite thing. Which is why I like to just have like 3 or 4 issues to read at once of a given series. Which maybe means I should wait for trades.
Yeah, that's about to say. I picked up this recently.
I
the
can't see
Jedi Fallen Order tie-in comic.
I'm missing one issue from that. For some reason, it wasn't on my pull list. So I never got that one issue. There are a couple sites that I like to buy from whenever I'm missing something, but it's still kind of frustrating, especially because like miniseries like that, comics don't sell as well as I think they do. So like miniseries like that is like, there just aren't that many of them that get out there. So
I only picked that up because I had a Target order. They were doing like a buy 2 get 1 free.
Yep.
Like on on a bunch of stuff, and so I was like just browsing through all the things that were available Star Wars wise, and I was like, I can find something.
Yeah, always.
And
right? Like I do the same thing.
So like, okay, I'll get the tie-in comic and I'll read that eventually.
I haven't read it yet either. Those miniseries are, especially again with that whole just like short form storytelling, the miniseries especially are kind of hard for me to keep up with. And plus that's going to be the hardest thing for me to get through in my print collection database as well, just because from what I can remember, comic pages are not numbered, and I think that's a metric. That is a metric that I do track. So we'll have some fun with that one. It'll take me a while to get through for sure. But anyway, that's cool. Like more Vision stuff, generally speaking, is cool. That's all I'll say about that. We're not going to do it again, especially because it would just be me ragging on the novel. That shall not be named because Cole has not read it. But I think it would actually be very cool. Did they mention if the Ronin comic they announced, is it pre the duel, post the duel?
I didn't see anything indicating one way or the other.
Okay, because that could be interesting. Since it's Visions,
it's clearly he had more adventures before this because he has a whole bunch of those red kyber crystals already. So theoretically, he could be adapting any part of his little timeline.
Right, and that would make more sense because it just starts to get complicated though if they don't want to contradict the novel. Then it's like, well, okay, is Visions a timeline? If it's all, you know what I mean? Where it's just like, are they trying to have it both ways? I'm not even saying it's bad one way or the other. It's just becomes interesting. The implication.
Nice to know which way they're going with it, right?
Exactly.
I don't care which way you go. Just tell me.
I'd like to know. But I think you're right. I think it'll probably be pre the duel because he's got so many other things. And honestly, I wanted to really like the novel so badly. If they can do some stuff to really kind of give a little more context for the novel and kind of retroactively help me appreciate it more, by all means. Like, I don't want to be negative and dislike it, you know? I shouldn't say I dislike it. I'm not going to litigate that again. So yeah, comics, something we don't talk about a ton on this podcast. I know Dakota keeps up with it better than I do, and Eva buys, like, when they can, buys a comic, but it's just gets expensive, and it's hard to keep. It's hard to store them all. But it's just
I
one
think
of
there's a
those
new
things.
Epic collection coming out like next week.
Those. I don't want to talk about Epic collections. I feel like I feel like I've missed the boat. Okay, sorry. I do have to say that my friend just sent me a picture of a Space Marine from Warhammer 40K painted like a Arizona green tea can. It just said, "Why would someone do this?" I'm going to respond later with, "Why wouldn't they?" I think that's fantastic. He keeps sending me fake Sprigatito Final Evolutions too. And they're all so terrible. I'm like, please tell me this isn't the real one. Please say psych. This is so bad. Please don't stand up. Don't stand up.
Remain quadrupedal. Remain quadrupedal.
Whatever. He's a menace.
Yeah.
Well,
the Epic collection coming out next week is actually one that you'd be very interested in.
Oh, I know which one it is. I don't remember what it is, but I know that I was
Jedi.
like, ooh.
It's the first one that's actually the Tales of the Jedi.
Because haven't they been called Tales of the Jedi? Or like there's something.
The first volume that was Tales of the Jedi was actually the Dawn of the Jedi.
Yes.
Yeah. They're just calling that whole little era Tales of the Jedi just as a simplification. Which, same way they've got like the eras. They have Tales of the Jedi, Old Republic, I forget what the one before that, Rise of the Empire maybe is the prequels.
Yeah, I think so.
I think, or like something like that. Then Clone Wars, and then Empire, Rebellion, New Republic, like eras basically. And they're like, well, the earliest one we've already used Old Republic, so we can't use that again.
That's one of those things that it's just like, part of me is just like, there's no time like the present. Get them now. Start getting them as they come out. Like, replace my omnibuses. Start
Menace
getting
Revealed,
them as they come
that's
out.
what it was called. Menace Revealed was the we're leading up to episode 1 and like up before Clone Wars, I guess.
Interesting. Really, I mean, just an era that was not explored that much, I think, in Legends.
Mm-hmm.
I think really, I don't want to necessarily say like should have been explored more, because it's kind of an era of galactic peace, so it's like, I understand why there wasn't more going on, but interesting to me all the same, even if they just wanted to follow Qui-Gon for a while, like that's fine by me. But anyway, is that everything? Can we
I think so. I think we can probably go into the main topic now.
Okay. Cole.
Because we haven't talked about 5 or 6 on this podcast, right?
No. 5, I will say the show was generally, for me, just on a straight upward trajectory. I don't think there was one episode that was not better than the one that I enjoyed. There was not one episode I did not enjoy more than the one that came before it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Where it's like each episode I enjoyed more. So I don't know how deep we want to go into 5. We talked about it a little bit on Royal Skywalkers.
Yeah, if you want more detail on that, we probably go listen to that, because it's literally it's us two also talking about that for like nearly an hour.
Right, it's the same thing. I will say though, we got the little recap at the beginning of the finale, and the stuff that worked for me still continues to work for me. Mm-hmm. The Vader Reva fight, very good. The small visual issues I had with last week's episode don't bother me. That's the kind of stuff that for me personally just goes away after the first watch. Generally speaking, I don't mind it too much. I definitely, I don't know. I just am really hung up on the flashback between Anakin and Obi-Wan, like that the duel back and forth. Like it's just. And it actually kind of ties into my thoughts on the series as a whole a little bit, that we can get into after we discuss the episode proper. But yeah, I mean, I don't have too much more to say about it. Like, that exists. If I remember, I'll post a link in the show notes to that podcast episode so that you don't have to, you literally have to do the bare minimum amount of work if you want to go listen to it. If I could link it to you right here in the audio and you could somehow follow it, I would, I swear.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I think it is really cool how they mirror the duel, that flashback duel, with the fight in the finale. They do a lot of parallels with that, which is nice to see. And that duel already had parallels to both their fight in Revenge of the Sith and the fight with Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi.
Right. Obviously, I don't want to jump right into like the last third of the episode, but we talked about you were very high. We were both very high on Reva and Vader's duel. Like that's really, really, truly fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was extremely well executed.
It was, and
only without an execution.
Okay, pretend you didn't say that. I'm gonna move on. I said this in the Discord call. I don't know if you saw it. I'm kind of hoping you didn't, because at one point I did say you died in 2019. I had to resuscitate you.
I did see all of this.
Okay. But I
think what you were getting at was that how I felt about the mall stuff.
Yes, that is what I meant. That is what I meant. Where
I
it's just
picked
like
up what you were setting down, but I was reading it all after the fact, so it was really funny.
So I stand by a lot of what I had said in the speculation leading up to this show. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the decisions, not a lot, but a few decisions that were made in the show. I don't necessarily think they should have been made that way. And that I stand by what I said, particularly the duel between Obi-Wan and Vader. I don't think that needed to happen. However, do I now think that that is one of my favorite duels in Star Wars? Yes. The lightsaber choreography to me is a wonderful blend of like Obi-Wan is like fighting kind of more like a prequel Jedi, but without the polish. And Vader, of course, is just fighting. He's not quite as heavy and stiff as he is in like Empire or, even especially in New Hope. Yeah. But he is, you can tell that he is like, I don't do this as often anymore. He is relying more on brute strength than he ever would have, in the past. So it's just like the lights. It's funny because we talked at how like some of the action in the show was a little weird, especially coming out of the gate. I don't want to make excuses. We might disagree. I'm starting to think that really was kind of intentional in some ways, at least as far as Obi-Wan is concerned. Because
that stuff I think is fine. It's the other action stuff, like with the Leia chase and that kind of stuff. It's like it's super wonky. I'm like, I don't think it. But the first fight with Obi-Wan and Vader in Episode 3, especially, I think is deliberately shot that way just to show how rusty everything is, and
how rusty everyone is. Exactly.
Yeah. With Vader just overpowering Obi-Wan and Owen's barely able to hold it together.
Right. And I just think that there was actually. I think there was actually, for as weird as some of it was, and for as wonky as the word we keep using, for as wonky as some of it was, I think there was actually a lot of care and thought that was put into the fight choreography as far as lightsabers were concerned. Yeah. And I think it shows. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's all definitely building to this final confrontation, and then it all comes together really, really well.
It does. I think this episode. I feel like the show could have benefited from one more episode, from having just a little more time, especially whenever I downloaded the episode and saw that it was 48 minutes long. I'm like, that seems really compressed. That seems really compressed for everything that needs to happen, or everything that we are kind of led to believe is going to happen here. But I mean, for you, what is the standout moment? How did you feel about the finale overall? Is a better question to start with.
I thought it brought everything together as well as it could have done, honestly. Like,
right.
I found it wholly pretty satisfying. I still think my general reservations about the series as a whole and its necessity and everything stand, but the execution the way it's all put together, I think it's really, really good.
So kind of a mall thing
Did,
where it's like, I
I
don't know if
need
this needed to
any
happen.
of I don't know if I needed any of this, but since it's here, I'm glad it was put together like this. You know?
Right, right, right. And I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad you're coming out of this. I would say generally positive. Like,
Yeah, absolutely,
cool. I'm glad
absolutely.
this exists. Um, but oddly enough, I love the finale. I thought it was great. I thought it was the best episode of the series.
Mhm.
As I said in the Discord, I laughed, I cried, and my body was tense literally the entire time. Like I could
Which it's
feel
so
my,
funny
like I,
because like we're watching this and like literally every character besides like one can't die.
I know.
I mean, it's like Obi-Wan, Vader, Leia, Luke, Owen, Beru, all of these people have to, in the Grand Inquisitor, the Fifth Brother, like so many of these characters literally can't die. So there really shouldn't be any tension, but the way it's all put together gives it tension. So
It
that's
does.
good storytelling. That's good filmmaking.
I know that's a great point. I didn't even I literally didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Where it's just like Allison, I was sitting next to her watching it, and whenever Obi-Wan and Vader are fighting, she's just like, "Oh well, we know he doesn't die. We know they don't die." And it's still, she said that, I'm like, it didn't really sink in. I was still like, but I don't feel good. You know, like
It doesn't make it easier for some reason.
no, it doesn't make it any easier. Especially because of the brutality. Like, it was nice to see whenever where they're having that duel, and I guess we're just talking about it now. They're having that duel, and then just some of the dialogue I thought was actually really well written, and really, as well as a robot can deliver a line.
Yeah,
I felt
they
like
get a lot. They could really get a lot out of it. That's one of those things I do wonder. Like, I want to know the process. Like, do they actually have James Earl Jones come in and do recording for it? Is it all completely synthesized? Is Hayden Christensen involved in all of the line readings, or is it just like that's one of those things I wonder about because they really, I think they wring a lot out of that performance,
they
whatever it is, however they do
they
it.
did, and I'm excited for the Disney Gallery because I'm sure
Mhm.
I'm sure we'll get one, and I'm sure we'll get more info about it there.
Yeah.
Because especially when you compare it to Luke Skywalker in Book of Boba Fett, it's night and day. The
Mhm.
Vader is night and day. It's like I literally heard it the first time and was like, "That's James Earl Jones."
Mhm.
Like, and I guess it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but it's not. You know.
It is, but it's not. So I just one of the things that there are a couple lines that Vader has that really stand out to me. I bet they stood out to you too. Where Obi-Wan is when he's got all the rocks or when they're fighting and he's like,
Mhm.
I see your strength is returned, but the weakness still remains.
The
And I'm just like,
weakness remains.
that is so hard. That is hard as hell. Like,
Hmm.
and to me, obviously we talked about this a little bit in the Discord, or it came up where it's just like the production team, someone here was reading the comics because Obi-Wan at the end of the show is dressed like one of the comic covers.
Yeah,
And
which
I think
that was originally based on
a figure.
a mythos statue
Yes.
that someone made. Like there was a statue I think is the like original look, and then there's the comic, and then there's a Hot Toys figure I think that's also based on that
Okay.
look, and it's straight up they've recreated that basically, and it's a great look.
Yep. It is. It's really good. But there's that. But Vader is talking like comics Vader. I felt like this was comics Vader, where it's like the same Vader who said, "All I see is dead men." You know, like that Vader.
Mhm.
That's
All I'm
the one
surrounded
that I
by is
saw
fear
here.
and dead men.
Dead men.
Yeah, that's one thing I'd like to do, or like see somebody pull out the numbers on it, like how much screen time does Vader have across the series? Because like if you look at the original trilogy, I think it's like 35 minutes total
Yeah, it's not a
for
ton.
Vader. It's kind of wild. I'm like, I bet he's got close to that in this series by itself.
Yeah.
Maybe more. I don't know, but it's
Yeah.
interesting.
I think he's.
Because for Vader, I always feel like it's like less is more
Right.
in some ways.
I mean I agree, and I think that there's a line that I am really, another one of the lines that's really stood out to me is a couple of things stood out to me I think part of it is that I watched these things for the first time. I've talked about this at length before. I watched these things for the first time with such a laser focus. You know, I'm almost as focused on how I'm going to react as much as how good the thing actually is. So whenever, you know, Vader buries Obi-Wan in the pit and he says, he ends whatever it is he says. You'll have to forgive me. I don't remember the line. He says master, very clearly acknowledging
master,
like
as he
is the, yes. And I'm like, there was a small, I will say small, but that part of me that was laser focused did kind of go very quietly, ugh, you know, because I'm like, when you left, when I left you, I was the student, but now I am the master.
I was with the learner, now I am the master.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, how embarrassing! I got a New Hope line wrong. Ugh. Now it's a part of me, a very big part of me, going ugh.
Yeah, there's definitely like some bits of dialogue that are designed to be like we're fixing, quote unquote, those little bits of dialogue.
That, and see, this is the one that really gets me though, because again, I think this line is hard as hell. So I'm very torn whenever Vader says, "You didn't kill Anakin, I did." I'm just like,
and he's like, he smiles. It's like sadistic. It's like, holy crap, man.
It's just like, and that part of me that goes ugh was like, all right. You know, like it was definitely, you got me. Like I was very ever so slightly conflicted because I'm like, I see what you're doing here, but I 100% do not care because that was so good.
It's extremely well done. It is one of those things that overall, that whole sequence with the slicing open the helmet and everything.
Yeah.
It's one of those things we knew was going to happen for sure.
Oh,
but it's also one of those things that's like, man, this would hit so much harder if this hadn't literally happened in Rebels, like nearly the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's just the show in general. It's like also episode 4. It's like, this is just the level out of Fallen Order. You're doing it again. It's like this all would hit way harder if this hadn't literally happened somewhere else and you're just doing the same thing again. It's like, I kind of wish y'all could have come up with more original ways to do this stuff. I don't know what you would have done. I don't know. I'm not telling you I know better, but you know, it doesn't hit as hard because it's happened somewhere else.
That's a great point, because I know we speculated a lot on Aburo Skywalkers last week about how the show could go, how the rest of it could play out, what could happen to Reva, and all of these things. I think we were kind of right about Reva, and then it's just like she wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Which
that's one of my gripes actually with this episode is not what happens, but how they show some of the stuff makes it look like Reva just is instantly on Tatooine and doing all this stuff.
That was another.
I find that very frustrating, but it's also like in my head, I'm like, they're just showing it like this as like a way to dramatize the whole thing. They're flashing back and forth between them to show like the similarities of what's happening, but also that's not really what's happening.
Yeah.
It's really more like the Vader stuff happens and then the Reva stuff happens. It's not really concurrent
because,
to me.
Well, see, that's interesting because I read it as concurrent, especially once Obi-Wan kind of is leaving and senses that something is up. And this is where my sci-fi fan took over as opposed to the space fantasy fan and was just like, oh, surely he's not going to get there before. Surely he's not going to get there before. And he didn't, but he also did. You know what I mean? Like he was there like right away. And I understand. I have talked about this at length. Hyperspace moves at the speed of plot.
Yeah.
But I don't always have to love it.
Yeah, I still don't like it. To me, it's just like, come on, guys.
I know. I jumped out.
Because the original trilogy and even the prequels don't show it like that. Like they never do the like instant teleportation across the galaxy stuff. To it's one of those things I want to like put together a video of how it's shown and how it differs from how it's been shown more recently. It's like there is a difference in the presentation of it. It's not really about how far is this planet from this planet. It's really not about that. It's about showing that time has passed in some way.
Yep,
and to do that, you know, you show them jump to hyperspace, and then you show something else happening, and then you show them arriving. You know, it's like it doesn't matter how long that was. It just matters that there was a difference in time. And in this, it's like, oh, she just teleports to Tatooine, and then suddenly he's there and causing problems. But in my head, I'm like, it's not really chronological. We're just seeing things like that because it's dramatic. And
maybe
Obi-Wan sensing the threat is literally like maybe her showing up at the farm rather than
right. It could have been any number of things. And that weirdly, I know it actually, you don't like the way it's portrayed, but it actually makes me feel better about it. In my read, that makes me feel better about it. But no, I'm right there with you, and I generally think that people who make a habit or show their love for Star Wars by hating everything it does, I think a lot of times like it will kind of cry like rules foul on things like that. And there was a part of me I'm almost always like, what rules? Shut up. It's all made up. But then it's like this kind of stuff happens where I'm like, yeah, this is a little more. This is a little like I'm not about to agree with these people, but I as a fan, I do kind of understand. I do have some very small amount of issue. Dakota is rolling his consistency. Eyes. I know, I would too. Dakota is rolling his eyes out of his head right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Dakota, it's happening. But I was so emotional throughout the whole episode. The Anakin and Obi-Wan was just it. Again, I don't think this duel needed to happen, but it did a lot. I mean, it did a lot to set up. It did a lot to set up Obi-Wan and what he says in A New Hope. Obi-Wan is able to finally make his peace with what happened. It's like I mean, Vader so much just tells him, it's like, I am not your failure. And it's like, of course, Vader is just like, I surpassed you, like, and you were holding me back. But Obi-Wan hears what he needs to hear, where it's just like, he got to apologize, and Vader just rebuked him.
Yeah. Like that was his moment of like reaching out, like, hey, it doesn't have to end here. Like this could still turn around, and Vader just throws it back in his face, like, hey, I'm not even like slightly interested. Like I am what I want to be, and I'm going to destroy you. And no one's like, all right, well, then my friend is truly dead. Walks away. Darth.
And then when Anakin screams, Obi-Wan at the
now,
end.
I want somebody to splice together the Obi-Wan and the Maul Kenobi.
And
like,
it's just
screaming his name.
That Anakin, I got chills when he did that. I was just like, there is so much rage and just like impotent frustration behind that. Because like he was gonna lose. He was gonna lose that fight. And there was something very satisfying to me knowing that the only time Anakin ever beat Obi-Wan was when Obi-Wan let him win. In A New Hope. That was it.
To me, this totally tracks too with I know you haven't read the Death Star novel.
Yeah.
One of my I swear, Steve Perry, he writes some of my favorite Vader content.
Because he writes good Vader.
He writes incredibly good Vader, both that and in Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah.
So in the Death Star novel, it doesn't follow Vader very much. There's just a couple of scenes in the novel throughout, but one of the scenes is literally the duel with him and Obi-Wan. And like Vader strikes him down, and he disappears, and Vader's like, "What the heck?" And is like creeped the heck out by what happened. He's like, I don't understand what just happened. And I think it even references the Revenge of the Sith novel with like the old like fear dragon that Stover like personifies as like the dark side in Anakin. I think he even references that as like beautiful. I love it so much.
Steve Perry, I take a lot of issue with some of the stuff you write, but
I'm not going to swear it's him because it's him and Michael Reeves, but they're both great. But it's like Steve Perry has like a couple of books where he wrote Vader, and it's just so good.
Naturally good. And, I mean, it tracks though, because he's the only one that wrote Shadows of the Empire, and we both talked about how much we liked Vader in Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, Vader in that, especially the scene with him like trying to heal himself and like getting it, and then the fact that he wasn't in pain undoes it. It's like it's like such an interesting read on it, and I love it.
Yeah, that's how that reads,
Yeah, so that totally tracks me with this. Is like Vader like finally gets that win, but then he doesn't have any satisfaction from it. He's like, crap, what just happened? I don't understand.
No, and he can't. And then of course we get our Palpatine cameo. Very exciting.
Yes, we do.
Somehow
yes,
didn't expect that. But then Vader can't even brood on it. He can't follow it, and it's like, again, it's like I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the way they pulled it off, where it's just like Obi-Wan, like Anakin, Vader knows Obi-Wan is still alive. Like I
Mhm.
thought it would have to be like
Faked
like
his
I
death
thought he
in
was gonna
some
leave.
way.
Yep, I thought he was gonna leave
Yeah.
him in the pit, and that was it,
Mhm.
or there was having to be some contrived thing. And instead, the showrunners were just like, "No, he knows he's still alive.
Yeah.
He knows. He just can't do anything about it."
Yeah.
Um.
I think this is a good moment to need to interject some of the leak stuff that I
Oh
read.
yeah.
So one of the things that's not the same is what the leaks talked about was Reva's fate. That was something that
Yeah.
changed, but also something that partway through the season, the reports on when there was potentially going to be a second season, that maybe they changed what her fate ended up being. I don't know if that's the truth or not. Who knows?
Okay.
But the original plot leak had Reva basically the same thing, going to Tatooine, trying to kill Luke, wasn't able to do it, and then goes back to Vader and says that she killed Obi-Wan.
Oh.
And then Vader kills her and basically says, "There's no way that you could have beat my master," or something like that. And so there's the report of his death, but he doesn't believe it. There's that kind of dichotomy
Right.
to it, but
Sure.
they don't do that obviously. So who knows what that actually happened. But one thing that was also different is that Luke, I don't think, was unconscious during that bit, and Reva was holding her lightsaber to his face. I'm I'm glad they changed that where he doesn't ever see a lightsaber, because that kind of is a weird continuity thing.
That's one of those like Anakin and Grievous never meet during the Clone Wars type
Yeah,
things, where
exactly.
it's I don't think I would have noticed it until someone pointed it out. Now that you
There's
pointed it
one
out,
moment whenever she actually breaks into the room where he's at, Beru attacks, and then Luke goes up the ladder. She has her lightsaber on at that moment, but if he wasn't looking, he wouldn't have seen it. So,
oh. And he doesn't necessarily know what it is,
Yeah, exactly,
even if he did
exactly.
see it.
And we've seen there's other glowing sword weapons in Star Wars, so
Sure. And that's as good a time as any to bring up a few little nitpicks that I do have that are almost entirely. I think it speaks to the quality of the show that it's pretty much, my nitpicks are almost entirely continuity related. Where it's,
Yeah.
it's nerd crap, right? Where it's there's nothing inherently wrong with what's happening.
That's why we're a
here.
Star Wars podcast. We care about nerd crap.
Exactly. So it's just I liked it whenever Allison was like, "You shouldn't lie to your kids," and I'm like, "No, for continuity's sake, Owen has to lie to Luke and say it's the Tuskens. It needs to work this way." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then Luke is getting chased by Reva, and there's all this she yanks him down with the Force and all this stuff. I suppose he could wake up and not remember any of it.
He bonked his head,
Yeah, but to me that feels it feels a little contrived. It feels a little
It is
contrived, where it's just it's like Luke now. He will remember at least some of it.
Mhm.
I guess conceivably he couldn't.
Maybe he'll think it was a Tusken. He doesn't know.
Yep, exactly. I don't necessarily know.
You've seen Black Robe Tuskens.
So you thought about it too? Because I did. My first thought when she was walking off into the desert, I'm like, interesting.
I didn't really think about that, but now that you say it, yeah, that does track. Maybe we'll get Sherrod hit, and it'll be tied in with that.
I was very happy to see Reva not die.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
there was a part of me
redeemed Darksider having to go out and penance,
Right. No, I
think
think
that
that'd
could
be
do it
sick.
Natural live action.
I think that would be sick. And it's just, part of me is I was honestly, there was a part of me that was afraid that she was going to kill herself with the lightsaber when she pulled it out. I'm like, don't do it. But I thought I've liked her throughout the whole series. This was 100% her best episode. I think her performance was really well done. And I think that her fight with Owen in particular, Owen and Beru, fantastic throughout the episode.
So great.
I love
that Beru was the ones we're not abandoning her home. We're going to fight her here. Come out swinging.
I think it was Tom who posted. There was a Tumblr post that was like, "Owen, we need to get out of here, or she's coming here," and it's the Danny DeVito from Always Sunny.
So
So anyway, I
started
started blasting or whatever. I started blasting. That was really good. I was really happy with both of them. I felt like Joel Edgerton. I love Joel Edgerton.
He's great.
You know me.
He's great.
He was really good when she's just
I'm
like,
glad that
you protect him.
the
Like,
lady who plays Baru. I like she got to do something. I was worried that she was going to be just like in the background the whole time. Because the first episode you see her a little bit, but that's it.
Yep.
And
No, she's key.
man,
I think she's key to this last episode.
Absolutely, it's great.
But my favorite line, honestly, it's one of those things where it's just like I heard this line, and it sent ripples not only through the original trilogy, but also through like the radio dramas, because Luke's relationship with his aunt and uncle is fleshed out, not a ton, but more, a little more throughout that. And whenever Reva says, "You protect him like he's your own," and Owen goes, "He is
my own.
He is," and I'm just like, "Oh my god!" Like it literally, I felt it. It shook me, and I was just thinking like, Owen doesn't want Luke to leave because the galaxy is a dangerous place. He wants to protect him. It's not that he needs the help. And it just reinforced that. Where it's like, it's kind of clear in the original trilogy, I think, that he's trying to protect him, and that's why he's keeping Obi-Wan away, and that he's not saying who his father is and all this stuff. But it just was like it gave so much more life to a character who has been, three-dimensional, but not by much, and always it took some legwork.
It's always minimal because there's really just only in the very, very beginning of A New Hope, and then they die, and there's just not much chance to flesh them out. I mean, you have the brief scenes in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, but they are very brief.
Yep,
it's basically just acknowledging that hey, they exist, not really giving much characterization beyond that. So this is really nice, like midpoint, getting to like flesh them out just enough, just to bridge that. Give you and make the connection to them. It's going to be harder whenever you see them die now. And also, I don't know who's posted about it. Somebody was like, "Man, I bet they took a bunch of stormtroopers with them." Like, they didn't go down. Yeah, I think it was Tom. They went down swinging. They did.
Yep. And then just they
forced the troopers to torture them.
There was no choice, right? And it's just
bringing the flame troopers. This is not the way to go.
For as much as I kind of complained and like didn't want certain things in the series to be based on certain decisions or whatever, that was really convoluted. But hopefully you know what I mean. It did the opposite of what I thought it might do. It didn't actually undermine a single thing from A New Hope, and it only enriched the original trilogy for me. There were things I didn't love, some nitpicks, but overall, as far as tying into the original trilogy, it only enriched it for me, and that's all I could really ask for.
To me, the only thing that I have questions about now is really about like Leia and the Organas, and Leia, how I have trouble now buying that they wouldn't have been honed in on much sooner, and that they would have continued to have the power that they have, seemingly at least in the original trilogy. Like that, like for a fact that Obi-Wan has like connections with this guy, and I think you just kind of have to maybe assume that Reva did most of that stuff on her own, and it wasn't in the records necessarily. But I don't know. That's the one like thing is like you've kind of stretched things a little bit there, and everything else. But then the connection between Leia and Obi-Wan is great.
It is. I think it really is, and it really, obviously, it's nice to have that. Oh, this is why she named her son Ben. I think that's really nice. I thought that is her name Vivian Lyra Brown?
I think that's right.
Okay. I thought that this was her. I thought she was good throughout the whole thing. I thought this was her strongest episode. I thought she performed incredibly. Not just for a kid. Like, I found her performance really strong overall. The relationship between them was so nice. It was so nice. It was very sad when she's like you said you'd get me home. Like, she was so upset when he was leaving. We thought she was so excited to see him, but then she saw Lola. Cried out for Lola. Alice and I were both just like, wow, that's raw. It was very funny though. Yeah, and I'm kind of right there with you. I just think that is more a the kind of narrative implications there. I'm with you on where it's like that is
Mhm.
you definitely did stretch that a little bit. I saw there was some discourse in our Discord, primarily just very minor, talking about the relationship and the nature of the relationship between Ben and I don't want to call him Ben. I never call him Ben. Between Obi-Wan and Leia, and it's just, to me, I think that is not a fault of the show and is more a fault of not the way Leia is written, but the way that Leia is written emotionally in A New Hope. You know, it's just like it's really well documented that, you know, her planet just got destroyed, but Luke's friend died. So like, you know, she's
Yeah,
comforting
yeah.
him.
There's
I
definitely a
think
bit
that's
there. I think they've addressed that in the comics a little bit, haven't they? They've like gone
yes.
into that some,
Yes.
where like
Yeah.
after the medal ceremony and everything, she finally kind of has a moment to grieve about everything because a
Right.
lot freaking happened, and she's just really good at
Yes.
bottling it all up, I think, and
Yep.
that's kind of what you have to read it as, unfortunately, because
Yep.
it,
And
it should be playing differently than that, but it is what it is.
it's
You
not.
can't
It is what it
change
is.
that.
You cannot change the text, and I think
Mhm.
that's okay. But it's just one of those like I don't. That's one thing that I actually wouldn't want them to be beholden to,
Mhm.
and especially given what we got. If they were like, oh, we were gonna do all this stuff with young Leia and Obi-Wan, it's just like originally I might have been like, I don't know, but then it's like, oh no, that's a great way to get him off the planet. Cool. And then it
Mhm.
turned into this whole thing where it's just like, no, this developed a relationship that otherwise never could have been developed. And it's
Mhm.
like you even get to see Leia like accept herself as like she's got this very minor kind of throwaway line fighting her cousin when he's like, you're not a real Organa. Like
Mhm.
Obi-Wan tells her about Anakin and Padme, and she's just like,
Yeah,
that's all, that's well and good. I'm happy to know that.
but looks
But
over at Bale and Brea, and it's like,
Freya, and it's like that's very
yep,
nice.
that's the real family that she's the one she's actually known her whole life. So it's good
And
to know
she
that
I
she
mean
came from good people, but they're not the ones that raised her.
yep, and she's the only one that makes it. She gives him that belly laugh. I don't remember what she said. Oh, she's like, I
Oh,
think
you
you
need to
should
get some
sleep.
sleep.
I think you
And
should
he just
sleep.
laughs. It's like, oh,
And
yeah.
like it's a holster. It's empty. Well, I wasn't gonna give you a blaster.
Blast.
You're 10 years
Yeah.
old.
Which you won't always be.
Yeah, and it's like ominous.
And then it fits Lola perfectly, so that's nice.
Yeah, no, it was it was an emotional core to the show that I didn't know the show needed.
Mhm.
Or didn't know that it would have, but it's just like the most pleasant of surprises.
Yeah,
I will look
yeah,
back on that and their relationship as a highlight of the entire
yeah.
series.
I think that looking at the series as a whole, like, I know you said it maybe could have used another episode. To me, I almost think it's maybe like too long in that they have to kidnap Leia and rescue her twice, and that
Sure.
redundancy maybe isn't necessary, and maybe not doing that twice and using the time to do some other stuff would fill in that time, like you were saying, like, you know what I
And
mean?
see, that is actually kind of part of my issue because I am left with I have a lot of I really did love this series. I thought this series
Mm,
was very good. I thought it was in a lot of ways, and most of the time was the most cinematic Star Wars show we've gotten. I think it's really well done. I am like huge props to everyone that worked on it.
mm,
Um but I if I can be honest, I'm left with kind of this weird melancholy at the end of it. Not just cuz it's over, but it's like this kind of feeling of I don't know if it's mismatched expectations or well, no, I think even Tom is basically the unofficial third host of this episode. I think it might have been Tom, could have been somebody else. I apologize. If not, I feel like there was not enough focus on Obi-Wan.
mm,
I feel like Obi-Wan kind of got a little bit kind of the short end of the stick in his own show because there was all of this emphasis on other things that had to happen to move the plot forward. And I
mm.
understand they weren't just going to do the novel. I always knew they weren't just going to do the novel
Uh-huh.
because that does not translate to a Star Wars show that is like it's a it's a subgenre. It's a genre in a genre thing.
Mhm.
It's like there's action, but it in a lot of ways it doesn't necessarily feel like Star Wars all the time, especially
Mhm.
if it gets translated to TV.
Mm-hmm.
But I do just kind of feel like all of the pieces to put Obi-Wan's development are there. I felt like Obi-Wan's development, I just would have liked to see more of it. It just felt like there was all this focus on the Inquisitors and Vader, and it's just like I would have liked to have gotten more from Obi-Wan internally. But, you know, there's the saying, show, don't tell. And it's like, you can see Obi-Wan change over the course of, like, they were on the ship when Obi-Wan is trying to, like, they're all like, we can make this work. You don't have to do this. Allison just goes, he's got that itch. And I'm like, he does. He does. He has the itch, and it's back. It's fully back. Like, he is a Jedi again.
Yeah.
Vader comments on it.
I really wish we could have spent more time on when he's first on Jabeam in the Bacta tank, and then they go to rescue Leia at the Fortress Inquisitorius. Yeah. I think that the first, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes of that episode should have been Obi-Wan recovering and like getting to know some of the people there.
Yeah.
Because we literally spend like 2 minutes there, maybe. And then they're off to do the rescue. We don't know any of these people at all. And we finally do spend a little bit of time with them right before the big raid in episode 5, and then on the ship in episode 6. But I think there really should have been more fleshing out of that. And that also could have been building up Obi-Wan's like, there's still people out there doing the good fight. And, you know,
exactly,
that being like him feeling hopeless about it, then seeing all these people still going strong, still trying to, you know, fight the Empire, resist where they can. That should have been a bigger focus of it, I think. And again, that's one of those other things that in the leaks they talked about Roken in his group, and they specifically mentioned in the leaks that he was part of the Partisans, and that never gets brought up here. So I don't even know if that's. I don't think that's something they're even gonna continue on happening. But it was interesting that they mentioned that specifically in the leaks. I was like, huh. I wonder if that got cut. Well, if that was just like maybe the original writing or backstory of it was supposed to be that, but it doesn't read right to me even from what we see.
No, I don't see him being a member of one. I could see him joining them.
Yeah, I could see that being in his future maybe, but right now, especially because at one point they say something about him not being soldiers and stuff. Like the Partisans are soldiers from the get-go.
Yeah. I did like him a lot, and I would like to see him show up again. I liked.
Well, he had the line at the end. He's like, "I'm just getting started," so I'm like, "Yeah, we'll definitely see him again."
That was really good. I liked him a lot, especially because he didn't just kind of fit that archetype of like, oh, I'm the gruff leader. It's just like, I respect your sacrifice. You're gonna go do this. Sorry, I put on a Texan accent. That wasn't offensive.
Go get him, yeehaw.
Exactly, but what he was like, you don't have to do this. We can make this work. You don't have to do this. And then he's like, oh, you're doing this for you, and that was, I think, I'm thinking about this now. I'm giving it more thought. The show just did a much better job of showing Obi-Wan's development rather than telling it. It was all there. It was all there. And I know I said that up the top of my little complaint there. But it is all there. And just seeing now that it's like, even Qui-Gon says, like at the end, spoiler, that it's like you just weren't ready. You weren't ready to see me. I was always here. Like you weren't ready. And it's like, he's cut off. He's kind of cut off from the Force. He's trying to train Luke. He's insistent on training Luke because he feels that Anakin is his failure. Luke is his way to redeem himself. That's how he fixes this. It's not about doing the right thing. It's about doing right by his friend. And at the end, it just hits so hard whenever he's just like, you were right, Owen. He just needs to be a boy. The future will take care of itself. Because like he sees Leia, and it's just like, well, Leia's growing up in her own way, and she's coming out right. And he's just like, I don't have to fix this. I just have to let him be. Let him grow up.
He also sees that what happened to Reva, where she didn't have a normal childhood. Like as a child, was taken in by the Inquisitors, and what happened to her. There's also that parallel. I mean, I think it's him seeing what the Jedi were. Maybe not exactly the best thing to do. Maybe it wasn't the best way to handle things.
Nope. Just let him be a boy.
He needs to grow up normally, and then if he decides he wants to make the fight, that's something he's going to have to decide later on for himself, and that's what he does. And whenever he's like, it's like, you can go with me to Alderaan, and we'll do the fight, but it's up to him.
Do what you feel is right, of course. And he's just like, well, I think I get the feel. Yeah, I mean, I feel like even if his aunt and uncle didn't die, he would have gone. And that's because it's like he he sees that Owen and Brew are good people, and he knows, obviously he knows that from the get-go. He knows they're good people and will take care of him, but he sees that and he's just like, that is more important than anything I could teach him. Just having him be brought up right. And then when Owen goes, "You want to meet him?" It's just like, oh, this is so nice.
And
This is so
he like
nice.
looks, he's like, gets that smile, then walks over with the skyhopper, with the skyhopper.
Of course, we'd be
Hello
remiss
there.
if we did not mention it. And that was one of those things that, I mentioned there were a couple things that made me groan a little bit. That didn't make me groan at all. I was just like, I love it. I love it. Because I always
made us wait for it, and then you did it.
I always forget that Obi-Wan, his first line in A New Hope is "Hello there."
Uh-huh.
I always forget that, and I always think I always go to Revenge of the Sith because prequel memes, right? Because prequel memes has ruined
that's
it
where
for
it
me.
became a meme.
Exactly.
It would just
But
be a
it is
random
like,
line in A New Hope, but now that it's like echoed across everything, it's a thing now.
it's a thing. And so I'm just like, oh, they're doing it because it's a thing. And it's like, well, they are kind of doing it because it's a thing, but also it's a subtle enough thing. It's not a big deal. And it's just like hopefully not, but it could be his last line in Star Wars.
It could be.
So it's just one of those, like, I
If
certainly
that's the
don't
case,
think it
that's
is.
kind of like poetry,
It is.
Lucas would be proud for that.
I don't necessarily think it is his last thing.
Probably
Because I
not.
think every normie I've talked to is really enjoying the show. You know what I mean? It's like, I think it is well received overall. And although I will say, with regards to a second season, seems far less likely. I know we kind of threw it around a little on the Bro Skywalkers. I don't think it's super likely that we see a second season. What do you think?
Man, it's tough. I mean, I think there's lots of threads in this that may get picked up elsewhere. Like, I think we might follow Reva for more, or the Path and those guys.
Well, we
And
saw
it's
her in Book of
possible
Boba Fett already. She's in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, of course,
Right?
obviously. Yeah. But I think there's lots of threads there that could be picked up, and if they wanted to do a second season, there's certainly enough material here they could do more. And I think if that was going to be the case, you have to keep Obi-Wan on Tatooine and focus more on his like training with Qui-Gon and maybe dealing with that Sharad Het threat or something like that. Something on that vein that would still give you some, like, maybe a lightsaber duel, something like that. But you can't bring Vader back into it.
No.
With Obi-Wan, at least. I think you could still follow Vader doing something.
I think so too.
And still make it like a parallel
and
story or something.
More than okay with that. More than okay with that.
That's the direction I'd want to see it go if there's more. And honestly, to me, it'll probably just come down to whether the viewership numbers are really good and if someone pitches a really good story, because that's been like the thing in the interviews. I think there's something with Kathleen Kennedy talking about, if there's a good story to tell, we'll do it. Like, somebody's going to come up with something, and it'll probably happen. Especially because Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen are both very much in for it, it seems like. So,
and that's one of those things where I love it when things have an ending, but also if you're promising me something closer to John Jackson Miller Kenobi 2014, oh my God, please. You know what I mean? It's like, if it's something closer to that, I loved what we got. If we get something closer to that, though, that is going to be tough sell. Season 1's going to be hard pressed to stay ahead of that one. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, for sure.
We didn't even talk about Qui-Gon yet.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that's the last thing, right? That's literally the last thing.
I love that they're arguing like an old married couple right out of the gate. It's good natured, of course, but it's like Qui-Gon's like, you just weren't ready to see me. I was always here.
It's like,
we have a long way to go.
Got a long way to go, man. Let's go. Walks off and disappears again. It's like, he's already got a spot picked out for Obi-Wan's hut.
I will say, Dakota called me out because I was just like, I wished for more Qui-Gon. And Dakota was like, oh my God, so you're saying you wanted a longer cameo from a character the show is not about. And I'm like, this is different. This is different.
One thing I will say I'm surprised about, I figured we'd hear Qui-Gon whenever he had his like moment in the pit with all the flashbacks and stuff. I'm kind of surprised Qui-Gon didn't make an appearance, at least like vocally there, as like, just something along with like maybe even like his lines like, You must train the boy. As like flashing through Luke and Leia,
Sure.
something like that. I kind of expected that to happen there, and then have the final appearance. But
Yeah.
whatever. That's just me, theorizing. Like, oh, that would have been pretty cool, but maybe that would have been too much, or showing their hand, or whatever.
Well, and I think part of it too is it would have made sense. That would have made perfect sense. I think I'm looking back at where I would have wanted to see Qui-Gon, and it was even, I know it was intentional, the way they framed that scene where he's holding his lightsaber and kind of twirling it in his hands on the ship right before he leaves, and he says something to Qui-Gon. They framed it so that he could show up as a Force ghost on the other side of that hold, and they just leave us hanging. I'm like, I'm gonna die. But then it makes so much sense, because Obi-Wan at the very end of the show and kind of the epilogue is so much more the Obi-Wan that we know than he was at basically any point throughout that whole show.
Absolutely.
So it's like he's kind of shut off from the Force. He's not involved. He's not doing it. And then, Qui-Gon, it's like once he opens himself back up and is like, no, I am a Jedi Knight, or I was once a Jedi Knight. You know what I mean? It's like once he becomes more assured, more self-assured, that's the training he needs. That's that last step. So it makes perfect sense to me that as much as I would have loved to see more Qui-Gon, because I love Qui-Gon, he shows up there at the end, and that's where he belongs. Short and sweet. Because I mean, Dakota is right. It's the show's not about him. The show's about Obi-Wan. So as much as I love Qui-Gon, it's right that he's just there at the end, and we know that for the next 10 years, he's talking to Obi-Wan. And they're communing, and Obi-Wan is learning, and all of this great stuff.
Yeah. From a certain point of view, don't they do the Qui-Gon Obi-Wan like conversations a bit?
Yep. I think that's Claudia Gray that wrote that one, and it's called Master and Apprentice. It's Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray, and it's whenever Luke goes away to
he goes back to the farm.
Right. And Obi-Wan, they're talking about how it's like, oh, I know what he's going to find there. And it's like, it's not great. Not a good thing. But that's one of my favorite stories from that entire book. That's actually something we didn't. Oh, go ahead. I'm going off a completely different tangent.
I was just ask a question about the comics, because there are, like you mentioned, the Jason Aaron comics that take place. It's like around this time-ish, right? Like, I don't know for sure. Like specifically, I think they're implying that by having him in that outfit and everything at the end of this is like that's leading into that comic time frame, because it's the same outfit. I would imagine. Does Qui-Gon show up in any of that?
Not that I remember.
I was just wondering if there's any connection there, if we knew that he'd already figured it out at that point.
Doesn't mean that it's not there, but I don't remember it.
Just curious. I wasn't sure.
Sure. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay. No, I remember now. I was going off a completely different thing. That's something we didn't talk about in our celebration episode a few weeks ago. They more or less very kind of tongue-in-cheek confirmed from a certain point of view Return of the Jedi at one of those panels. I don't know if you were in that one, but they were like, do we need to do one of the, like, we probably need to do one of those, don't we? And it's like,
the crowd cheers,
confirmation.
Like,
Very soft confirmation of something we knew was kind of already soft confirmed anyway.
Yeah.
But all in all, Kenobi.
He was kind of sad that we have to wait till 2039 to get the 40 years from Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace, I will say, Phantom Menace has an Empire Strikes Back problem. Doesn't lend itself super well. There's a couple scenes, I don't know. Hard to say. I think it's better than Empire Strikes Back.
You've got Tatooine, you've got Coruscant. There's a good pool of people potentially.
I guess you're right. It's closer to Return of the Jedi than Empire Strikes Back. But I don't know.
You don't spend much time in Empire Strikes Back in like populated areas where there's potential story threads.
No, at all. So I mean, I'm sure there are going to be 15 stories from the point of view of Ewoks and Return of the Jedi, but you know what? That's all right, because they're there.
And there'll be adaptations of either the cartoons or the movies.
Yeah, sure. Whatever. Sindel Tawani's going to be in there, and it's like she will be ambiguously canon, for however long, until she shows up at Luke's Jedi Academy or whatever.
Yep.
which is funny because she was not a Jedi in Legend. Do you know this? She's like a newscaster in Black
Oh,
Fleet Crisis.
I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah, she's a newscaster or a journalist or something. It's just like, no way. I remember I was reading, because that's the same Star Wars series where I've talked about this before, where Luke and Akina very candidly talk about sex, which is something that does not come up in Star Wars very often. And Han says, "Son of a bitch," and it's like, what is this? Actually, Aaron Alston, reading Betrayal, bringing it all full circle. Reading Betrayal, Han calls 3PO Goldilocks at one point. And I'm like, whoa, that opens a whole can of worms, buddy.
I feel like that's not the first time that's happened. I might be wrong.
I know that Han calls him Goldenrod, which I guess is a real world plant. So
yeah,
it is what it is. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, Kenobi was really good. I feel like even just the few things that I didn't, or the few things that were not sitting quite right with me, I feel like we talked through them, and I feel like I'm gonna revisit this, and I'm gonna come back to it, and always be happy with what I see. It's only just gonna age. It's just gonna age very well.
Yeah.
A little, again, just overall final takeaways. A little too actiony for me, but I get it. They're trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator of Star Wars fan in a lot of ways, and that's fine. It can't be Obi-Wan just riding on a Neope for 7 hours combined, and thinking as much as I want it to be.
It is pretty wild now that I'm looking back on it, that we had 4 Inquisitors in this show, and Obi-Wan never fought any of them.
Nope. I didn't touch on this too much, but I do also want to say, too, the conversation between Reva and Obi-Wan at the end was very good. Like, I did think it was very funny, though, when she pulls out the lightsaber, Obi-Wan shifts uncomfortably. He's just like, what's she about to do? Very quickly is like, no, okay, there's more to it than that. She's not gonna leave out at me. But she is just, her journey was very interesting. She really was a character that I think she's a really great kind of, I hesitate to say cautionary tale, but like a good example of a character where it's like, especially in a series as short as this, I don't think you should count anyone out before you have the full picture. Because she ended up being a very strong character to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we said after the first couple of episodes. I was like unsure about her place in things, but also there was clearly more story to tell. And now looking at the whole thing, I think it's great. Like, I think her story was really, really good.
I'm happy to hear that. Very happy to hear that.
I'm still, it's like one of those things, I still don't know if maybe in this show, maybe that wasn't the best place to do all of this. I don't know. Maybe it would have done better to have the better focus on just Obi-Wan, but who knows?
Sure, who's to say? And I just think that's a great way. You made it click for me. I feel like this show was a little crowded. That's how I feel about the show.
I've seen several people say it feels like this is like an Inquisitor show and an Obi-Wan show smashed together.
Yep, and that's kind of what I meant by the show. That's what I meant by the show needed another, like, one more episode. And it's not that it, because I mean, what you said about Leia being kidnapped twice, like, sure, that's a valid criticism. I see that. But I meant it in more of a way of just like, there's just too much happening. We needed like one episode dedicated entirely to the Inquisitors, and we needed one episode dedicated entirely to Obi-Wan. And I think that they could have given, split it up with that extra episode.
I think looking back on it, it's like, I think you don't need the double like kidnappings. I don't think you need the 5th brother and the 4th sister at all. I think they could be cut from the thing entirely. This is the 4th sister, because she does, like, I think she talks like twice, doesn't do anything, never pulls her saber, nothing. So I'm like, I don't even know why she's here. I kind of assumed that she might be, the expendable Inquisitor, and
the red shirt.
Yeah, she might be the one that's like, we've never seen her before.
I think it would have been, I think it would have been nice. Granted, there's still a lot of time between Kenobi and Rebels, but But if it
It
had
was
been
about
the
5 years, though, right?
if it had been the seventh sister, because
Yeah,
it's
but
like
then
we
again,
know
that
that
creates the other problem. It's like, we know she can't die. It's just another character that we know.
and see, I
It's
I
weird.
hear that,
It's
I
weird.
hear that, where it's like it introduces a strange, like the dramatic stakes change, but also it's just like we know that a lot of the characters in the show can't die. I
Mhm.
don't think that's what the show's about,
No, it's
and
not. It's
that's
not.
yeah.
It's definitely
So
not
I
about that,
think
but also I feel like every character you introduce that you know their fate, you just lower the entire tension of the show. It's like, okay, well,
sure.
I guess this show no one can die at all. it's kind of how it feels. It's like, well, that's kind of weird in a show that's about threats and lightsaber duels and
Yeah,
blaster fights. And
fair
like,
enough. Fair enough.
eh.
You're right.
It's like,
Oh,
and Reva's the one's like she could have died and she didn't. So
yep.
good on them
Now
for
I
not
will say
taking the easy route.
one thing. I don't necessarily think that Riva needs to be the Tusken in the dark garb.
No, I don't think that needs to
I don't
happen.
necessarily need. I don't think that needs to happen. But I do. My last big loose end is the one that I was afraid of that I talked about on Umbrella Skywalkers.
Mhm.
Riva knows Luke Skywalker's there.
Okay, see,
So
that's something I meant to bring up and I forgot about it. How much do you think she knows?
Oh,
So I've
we
seen
talked
this
about this in
discussed a
Discord,
lot.
didn't we? Where it's like we
There's
don't know
been
who
a lot of
she.
discussion about this.
She is there to get revenge on Obi-Wan. She doesn't know who this kid is,
That's
and she
that's
knows
what
that
I
they'll-
think. I've seen a lot of people discussing this though.
Yeah,
Based on
That's-
what we
I'm-
see in the
I'm
show,
there
I
with you.
don't
I'm there
think
with
I don't think she knows who Luke is beyond because I don't even know. Does she ever hear his full name? I mean, if she heard his full name, she might make the connection.
But no, I don't think she does. She knows. She hears. Oh, she very specifically does not hear his name. She hears the boy Owen Tatooine. That's what she hears.
And then
So-
actually there, she just hears Luke whenever they're telling like Luke run,
Sure.
all that stuff.
That's like whatever.
So I don't think that she actually knows that it's Anakin's kid or who Leia is, like significance wise. Just knows that they're important for some reason to Obi-Wan. And I rewatched episodes 5 and 6 today, just like to get
Right.
a full read on everything. And it really does read. I don't even know if they don't really address it beyond her going after Luke as like revenge, but Obi-Wan kind of does just like hang her out to dry. Like
Yeah.
he tells her, he's like, hey, it's like together we can take him. It'll work out. And then whenever Vader shows up, he just hightails it out of there, leaves her to. And then Vader's like, he was wise to use you against me. I'm like, yeah, he just got screwed over by Obi-Wan, and
Yeah.
so she
So
knows,
she wants.
she's like, well, he cares about something on Tatooine, so I'm gonna go kill it.
But she can't because she's not actually evil. She's
Mhm.
after one specific thing, and she doesn't have that.
It does make me
anymore.
wonder how many people has she killed, like in service of the Empire. It's like probably quite a bit.
Probably quite a few, and that's what I mean. It's like her goal was noble, but her means are about as misguided as you could possibly be.
Yeah,
She's
for
going
sure.
about it for all the wrong reasons. Oh shoot, there was one. Oh, I did want to mention there was a lot. As we remember, there was a lot of some of it. There was a lot of discourse surrounding the Grand Inquisitor whenever his look was announced. Some of it good natured, some of it in good faith, some of it not. I think overall, I think he looked very good. I've mentioned that a couple times. I think
Mhm.
they picked like the worst shots to display his costume.
Yeah. The original, like the first glimpses we get are not flattering, but
No, they're
overall,
not.
it's very good.
Overall, I loved so much the scene where Vader is going after Kenobi, and he's just like, the Grand Inquisitor's like, my lord, we can't get distracted by one Jedi. We could end this whole thing right now. And Vader's like, he's not just a Jedi. Go after Kenobi. And then completely out of focus, the Grand Inquisitor goes, oh, and just like purses his lips. And I'm just like, that is A+. I love everything about that. That
Yeah,
was
no, his
so good.
performance is really good. It's really,
It
really,
really
good.
is. I don't
Like,
know how much it is like the Grand Inquisitor in the show, but it's unique and it's memorable, and I love the energy that he brought to it. Say what you will about his costume, I think his acting was very
Yeah,
good.
the acting is great. I mean, there's still part of me is like, I really wish you could have got Jason Isaacs for it, just because
Right, sure,
synergy.
sure.
But
Yeah.
I think the guy does amazing work with it. like you said, his like facial performance and how he's just like so like snide and like sniveling about all of it. It's just great because we never really see him.
Revenge. Revenge does wonders for their will to live. He just sounds vaguely unhinged all the time, doesn't he? He's
Yeah, it is funny because in Rebels we never see him in context of anything where he's not in control. Like he is the head guy that we see, and seeing him like having to kowtow to Vader is interesting. It's a different context than we see him in Rebels.
Yeah, he was very good.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard there whenever he does. He gets that look on his face.
Yeah, I saw exactly what you're talking about. He's like, not the call I would have made, but you know,
you're the boss. You're in charge.
And then I could just imagine him like maybe waiting outside Vader's quarters on Mustafar whenever he's talking to the Emperor and be like, "Yep, I told him. I
don't know, man. I thought he was good. It was just overall show very strong, very good. Do you have anything else that you want to get out? You're dying to get out before we get out of here. It's been a long one.
Yep, I think we basically hit all the high notes. I think we should say that both Eva and Dakota really enjoyed it as well.
Really enjoyed it. They
both chimed into the Discord and said they really liked it. So, mention that here. We'll get more from them next time they're on.
Yeah, we're all on the same page. I'm glad that you came around on the show because I know you were a little cooler on it when it started.
It's still like not the show I ever really was like clamoring for, but what we got was really good. I'm happy for it. On a funny note, it's still really funny that we have had 3 live-action Star Wars TV shows, and they've all had Luke Skywalker in them. Will Andor be the first one without him?
I can't. You're making a bold claim there.
I don't see how he could possibly show up, but
Hey, you know what? I would have said the same thing about the book of freaking Boba Fett, but here we are.
It's just kind of funny when you put it like that. It's like, wow, that is kind of weird, isn't it?
And that's what I meant when Dakota said that when I was talking about the Qui-Gon cameo not being long enough. Dakota's like, wow, you want more cameos? You want more of a cameo? And I'm like, Dakota, this is not the same thing. This is not the same thing. That is bad. That is a bad faith take. I think it is reasonable for Qui-Gon to show up in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I do not think it is reasonable for Luke Skywalker to show up in the Book of Boba Fett. You know what I mean? At least in an episode that completely excludes Boba Fett. Whatever. I don't know. We gotta stop talking about that. It keeps coming up, but it's just so... It's bizarre.
Bringing up in a lighthearted manner. That's all I intended to be. Was a joke.
That's true. We're having fun. It's a good episode. I'm gonna say it again, just so everyone knows. It's a good episode. I really enjoy it. It's just weird. It's still weird. It hasn't like smoothed itself out for me, and I don't think it ever will. In that regard, Colt, where can people find you on the internet?
I'm at Mando Wraith on all the social media stuffs, and I'm on Bro Skywalkers, where we're going to be finishing up Vote Commando True Colors this next week.
We are. We're
going to be finishing the book. I mean, whether or not we'll get to record is the question. Right?
I guess that's always the question. I've already finished it. If we can't record, I might kill you. This might be the
I
end
will
of
do
it. This
everything in my power to make
this
sure
might be the straw. This might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. This podcast exists on Twitter at SW Skyhoppers. Usually every once a week, there's some nonsense that comes out of that Twitter account. Also, just to be notified when new episodes go live, like this episode, it's possible, probable even. This one will be late. It will be out tomorrow on Friday, but it's 10:40. I'm just gonna be real. I want to read Legacy of the Force, and at the end of the day, consuming Star Wars takes precedence over editing my Star Wars podcast. You can email us skyhoppers@gmail.com. skyhoppers@gmail.com. Thank you, Cole. I always forget. I'm trying to just blow through this too fast. Eva wrote their review of Heir to the Empire. They're 100 words or less. Spoiler alert. They liked it. It's kind of hard not to, like I say that, there are plenty of people that don't vibe with it, but I don't understand those people. Patreon.com. I already mentioned it. $1 a month. You get access to Discord. You get access to After Hours. You get access to video After Hours. You can see my new N64 controllers that I got last weekend. They're pretty sick. I think that's everything. Am I correct in assuming that?
Think so.
Cool. Emma and Dakota will hopefully be back with us next week. We're back to that wonderful and terrifying place of no new Star Wars for a while. So it'll be nice to get back into some Clone Wars, get back into just whatever. I'm really enjoying the episodes I really enjoy the episodes where we just sit down and just go for it. Those have been some of my favorites, and it's just they're very low stress. So I feel like they really maintain that feeling of four friends hanging out talking about Star Wars and just wherever we go. Listeners, as always, thank you for listening. We appreciate you hanging out with the friends talking about Star Wars and doing all of that. We hope you liked Kenobi. I don't know why I'm doing this all of a sudden. I'm going to stop myself. I specifically don't have anything else to add. This is the Skyhoppers podcast, signing off.
Somebody get this walking carpet out of here.
You're a funny little boy.
Wow.
Still my favorite.